Bonhoeffer was born in 1906 into a cultured, affluent family. His father was a well-known psychiatrist who taught at the University of Berlin. His mother was the granddaughter of a famous professor of church history and the daughter of a pastor and theologian. During his university career, Bonhoeffer decided to pursue the study of theology as a profession. At the time, he made this decision for academic reasons, rather than as an expression of personal faith. He studied at the universities of Tübingen and Berlin, earning his licentiate in theology at Berlin at the age of 21. He wrote his licentiate thesis on the topic of the communion of saints. In his mid-20s, Bonhoeffer experienced a deepening of his theological vocation, a kind of personal conversion, in which the practice of his Lutheran faith became vitally important to him. He committed himself to personal prayer and to meditation on the Bible. He found special inspiration in the Psalms and in the Sermon on the Mount and the Gospel. After a period of pastoral ministry in Barcelona, Bonhoeffer spent a year of study, 1930 to 31, at Union Theological Seminary in New York. While he was in New York, he became involved in the Abyssinian Baptist Church in Harlem, a church that's still very active and important. Bonhoeffer made many friends in the African American community. His experience of poverty in Harlem and racism in the U.S. influenced his later opposition to the racism of the Nazi regime. Bonhoeffer lectured periodically at the University of Berlin until the Nazis officially expelled him from the university in 1936. After Hitler came to power in 1933, however, Bonhoeffer lost his interest in pursuing an academic career. He recognized immediately that National Socialism was godless and disastrous. He became known for a famous radio address on the concept of the Führer given in February 1933, shortly after Hitler became Chancellor of Germany. In a play on words in German, he warned his listeners that the image of the leader, the Führer, would gradually become the image of the misleader, the Verführer. In 1936, he received a call from the Confessing Church, the branch of the Lutheran Church in Germany that opposed Hitler. This call was to lead an emergency seminary for young ministers. Bonhoeffer directed and taught in that seminary until the police closed it in September of 1937. During this time, he wrote his well-known work entitled The Cost of Discipleship, which is really a polemic against what he called cheap grace. Reflecting on his experience of the vibrant communal life that had been created at the seminary, he also wrote Life Together in 1938. On a lecture tour in the U.S., when war broke out in 1939, Bonhoeffer decided that he had an obligation to return to Germany. Writing to the Protestant theologian Reinhold Niebuhr, he explained, "I will have no right to participate in the reconstruction of Christian life after the war if I do not share the trials of this time with my people." Bonhoeffer then made the momentous decision to become more directly involved in the resistance movement. Through his brother-in-law Hans von Dohnanyi, he became a civilian employee of the Abwehr, the German military intelligence. Bonhoeffer's work as a courier for the Abwehr enabled him to make contacts for the resistance abroad, including a meeting with Bishop Bell in Sweden. With his choice to work as a double agent in the military intelligence, Bonhoeffer had made the difficult decision to move out of the realm of the ecclesiastical into the political sphere, a move that isolated him from some of his church colleagues. The resistance was behind two assassination attempts against Hitler in March of 1943, neither of which was successful. It was also involved in the famous attempt carried out by Colonel von Stauffenberg on July 20, 1944. Bonhoeffer was arrested on April 5, 1943, along with his sister and brother-in-law. He spent the first 18 months of confinement in the Tegel prison in Berlin. He was eventually allowed to have regular visitors in this prison. He became popular with many of the guards, some of whom helped to smuggle out his writings. Most of his letters and papers are addressed to Bethke, his friend and former student, who was stationed as a soldier in Italy but also involved in the resistance movement. With the failed attempt on Hitler's life in July of 1944, and the discovery by the Gestapo of incriminating evidence against members of the Abwehr, Bonhoeffer was moved to a more secure Gestapo jail. Eventually, he was transferred to the concentration camps in Buchenwald and Flossenburg, and he was hanged on April 9, 1945, together with Canaris, Oster, and others. His brother Klaus Bonhoeffer and his brother-in-law von Danjehi were also executed by the Nazis. Bonhoeffer's letters and papers from prison are the writings of his which have made the greatest impact. For Bonhoeffer, the active Christian faith leads us to perceive and to respond to the real concerns of the world. He says that God must be found at the center of life, and not only in suffering, in activity, and not only in sin. In these prison writings, Bonhoeffer expresses his conviction that we must find God and serve God right in the midst of the world, even a world that's increasingly secular. He says, God is the beyond in the midst of our life. The church stands not where human powers give out on the borders, but in the center of the village. Such a view of Christianity entails a stance that faces and responds to the concerns of the world, especially the concerns of justice. The church must discover God's presence in the midst of the sweat, the toil, and the projects of everyday life.